Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Wise Content Creates Wealth. You've heard that content is king. Well, wise content rules the world. This podcast is about understanding how you can make and utilize wise content to improve your financial success and your company's bottom line. I am your host, Joseph Franklin McElroy, and I am a marketing technology expert who has built a multi-million-dollar company. I'm also an award-winning content producer. So be sure to go to wisecontentcreateswealth.com to sign up for my newsletter and get access to resources to help you produce wise content. Now, that site is under development, so you might see some things that at this point that need to be updated. So if you have a problem, go to facebook.com/wisewealth. Wise Content Creates Wealth. Anyway, my main company is Galileo Tech Media, and it's a leader in SEO and inbound marketing. We're specialists in wise content, which is content that incorporates semantic science, behavioral science, artificial intelligence, and data to make marketing content that is smart and that performs better. My tool tip of the day for all you people out there is to, and it's sort of a basic one, but I want to make sure that you do it, is to make sure that you install Search Console on your websites. It's a tool from Google. It's free, but it's pretty critical in terms of just doing basic analysis of how your content is performing on your website. You can do things like go in there, find out what are the high pages with high click-through rate that Google perceives as being very important, and even have good, performance on the page metrics, but is not actually converting very well for what you wanted to convert for. And those pages are the most important to go in and optimize, to change, to fix, because if they're getting great quick click-through rates, and they're having good performance in terms of people there, but things are not happening, those are where you're going to make some immediate cash. You're going to make some immediate money. So you want to go into Search Console and do that sort of thing. Now, to find out a little bit about this kind of information, I did a webinar a couple weeks ago called SEO for Your Product Pages. And I did record it, and it's up on YouTube. And if you do a search for SEO for Product Pages webinar, Galileo, it'll come up number one, and you can click on it to get to it. It's also available on the GalileoTechMedia.com website at /webinar-signup. And of course, I've got it right now up on the Facebook page, facebook.com/wisecontentcreateswealth. So that is a tool tip. I'm going to try to give you some interesting tools every week. But today's agenda is content strategy as ROI. I wanted to say SEO. I'm so used to saying that three-letter acronym, but no, it's ROI, return on investment, and modeling. And with me, I have a perfect person to talk about that sort of thing. His name is Keith Reynolds, and he is the founder of Publio, which is PUBLI.io, which has a content strategy training and media as its primary focus. He developed the Publisher's MO, which we'll talk about a little bit later, a unique content strategy and development methodology that empowers teams to achieve their business goals. He has worked with category leaders, including Apple, IBM, institutional investors, media software, Kodak, Rainbow Sports, and Vodafone. He's founded other startups, and over 30 years, campaigns he has led has generated tens of thousands of leads, put hundreds of millions of dollars into his clients' pipelines, and has helped them raise capital. Keith is a prolific speaker. He speaks to groups, and he presents across a variety of media, and moderates and appears as a guest on many panels, podcasts, and webinars. He serves on the board of the Stanford Symphony and the Stanford Partnership, where he's on the Stanford Innovation Week Committee. He has a book called The New Content Culture that we'll talk about a little bit later as well. That is all about defining your content strategy ROI model. Howdy, Keith.
Hey, how are you? Nice to see you,
Fine.
Johnson.
It's nice to see you as well. Keith and I used to work together back in the day. Back in the day being a couple of years ago. But just in this podcast, it brings people together as their paths converge back together for a time. So things are going well for you. How's the doing speaking and moderating doing for you in this pandemic world?
It's been good. I've gotten very, very involved this past couple of years with Stanford Innovation Week, and we produced about 25 hours of programming since March, since the pandemic, and really had amazing people from all over the world. Our area has a huge network that's not only local but global, and we've been able to interview people about what they're doing to innovate during the pandemic. It's created some really interesting conversations.
Mm-hmm. I imagine one of the biggest innovations for everybody is how do you network and interact with people when you have to maintain lots of distance, right? And I mean, both you and I really built our businesses on who we could meet and mingle with and talk to and do the networking thing. So for us, it's I think a whole reinvention at the mid-career, shall we say, of how we do things. So are you feeling the pressure of that?
I've actually found, well, so, just to point to where we started, you and I met through the New York Inbound Marketing Professionals, which you founded.
Yeah.
And I worked with you on that for probably, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And we had a great synergy in doing that. And we drew people, we'd fill a room with 30 to 50 people once a month. And our focus was on getting great people to come and talk to the group. And we got a reputation for good programming together. And I found that the same formula works going digital.
Mm-hmm.
And there's new platforms. You can be in a networking group that has a Slack channel. It's very narrowcast, and you can use mediums like this, which you've invited me on to be part of one of your first shows here with Wise Content Creates Wealth, and all of those digital kinds of activities replicate what we were doing at a physical location down in Manhattan 5 years ago.
So I want to dig into your past just a little bit before we get to the current world, right?
Sure.
And I think it's interesting that you both worked for IBM and Apple. And how is those experiences different for you, right? Especially as it relates to how they communicated or how they worked with content.
Well, IBM was an introduction to my whole career in technology. And we were using, back then, digital communications was learning how to get a laser printer working. And when it wasn't compatible, you had to dive into the code that the computer sent to the printer and debug it. That was digital communications and troubleshooting. And, when I worked for Apple, it was 20 years later. And so the technology had obviously changed. But I would say a similarity is that to learn to operate at scale and to be able to leverage your resources to achieve large scale things with a small group of people. And that was common in both situations. The culture was in both cases different in many ways, but also in both cases very focused on goal achievement and following your metrics and understanding, what are the key drivers of performance within any group, and then working as a team to constantly improve. And that mentality spanned both organizations. And really, this the book that you mentioned, The New Content Culture, speaks to how to develop a digital strategy for content, but also how to work with your team so that you have sustainable results. And that's really what I've tried to do with my new endeavor.
Cool. Well, the thing that I'm big in right now is is demand generation, right? And I look at content as a critical part of that. And you have a lot of experience over the years. That you said you generated thousands of leads in demand generation. And you were an early leader. What is that early leader? What did you do? And how was that related to what we do today?
Well, let's see, I wrote my first website in 1995 and always got involved in not just the production of the website, but how does it integrate into what the organization's trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And so that would quickly lead you into the marketing planning aspect of a website. And in the year 2010, a blog I had been working on for a startup, and we'd gone through the financial crisis. Raising money had slowed to a trickle, and we had a Homeland Security product. And I just started blogging. I taught myself WordPress, and within 10 months, I was asked to testify to Congress, and that in turn led us down to the belly button of the beast in Washington D.C. And we had a great meeting, and they referred us out to Sandia National Laboratory, and we had our software and hardware solution tested and evaluated out in New Mexico. And
we'll come back to, I want to come back to that. We have to take a break right now, but let's finish that. That's an interesting story, the congressional testify, when we come back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Do you love or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history, its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Hey, all you listeners, looking to boost your business? Why not advertise on Talk Radio NYC with very reasonable rates? Interested? Simply send us a message on our website, talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. We speak to people from business, sport, military and politics, all around what makes a great leader. The personal experiences of what's worked and, maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy back with the Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast with my guest, Keith Reynolds. Hi, Keith. So you were talking about testifying before Congress. Now, to me, and you mentioned it was a content sort of led there, and a big event like that is, I think, is like as a premier Wise content event. I was talking to Jerry Ashton in my first show, and he had a book that led to a mention on John Oliver's HBO show that led to eventually a huge donation to their nonprofit. So, those kind of stories I think are important to emphasize, that Wise content can lead, from a well-crafted beginning to an exciting middle that then produces the end results of success. So give me a little bit more juice, a little bit more details about this congressional testimony and how that happened.
Yeah, so I got involved with a group of scientists and engineers in around 2007. And we started experimenting with different ways we could identify radioactive materials out on a network. And there was a huge revolution in security going on at the time, away from analog networks where sensors and security equipment was hooked up on copper wires to Ethernet and having a digital security practices. And it allowed you to fuse lots of different kinds of data together. And so we started hooking up radiation sensors to the internet, and we were working with hospitals. We originally went into hospitals thinking we help keep the radiological materials they had in the hospital from leaving. And we found out that the customers told us, no, actually doctors and nurses were very worried about somebody arriving at a hospital and if they were hot. And so we installed a radiation sensor at the emergency entrance of Washington Hospital. And so we were blogging about that and all of the ways that people were losing custody of radiological materials at construction sites and gas pipelines. And that, somebody found us on the internet from Google is, I love your idea of wise content, because it's the data about your content that Google links into, and somebody was able to find us and said, we'd like you to testify to Congress. So
what did they just invite you and then you just show up and then you don't have any idea what they're going to ask you, or did you have an idea what they're going to ask you? Or
I had a conversation with him, and there were several inputs that we had, and then it was written testimony that was submitted. I didn't get to go sit up and swear in or anything like that, but it was written testimony, and that again, it was the relationship. So one of the things that I focus on, I'm more of a marketer than a technologist, and what I love about working with you is we have two very unique perspectives at this. But it's about the relationships, right? So you get someone to read your content, they invite you to do something, you go down, you meet people, then they say, well, you need to talk to so-and-so, right? And that is really guided, it's the subject of my book. It's the whole idea of inbound marketing. It's what do you do next? And what do you do next? And what do you do next? And as a marketer, you got to plan all that stuff out.
Well, I think that's a great story, because, the written testimony is probably somewhere that somebody might eventually see. It's an important piece of the historical document, and there you are in it. And it's something that you can use then in your materials and your sales pitches for the rest of your life, right? Yeah. So that's a kind of a blog led to that piece of extreme wise content that gives you credibility for now and forevermore, right? Yeah. And it got there because you put your thoughts and content out there in a way that it never really existed before, right? And before then, and I think that's a fantastic story. And that eventually led to something called Chief Packaging Officer. I think that's where we started having some interactions.
That's right.
Tell that story. That's a pretty interesting one.
Well, that was really cool. So there's a startup called Design to Launch in Stamford, Connecticut. And several people I knew were working there. And I had, had the security experience. And then I was working with a HubSpot agency, and we proposed to build a magazine for them called Chief Packaging Officer. Now, Kodak was just coming out of bankruptcy at the time, right? They had not done any marketing for 2 years, and they had acquired this startup called Design to Launch in Stamford. They kept the offices there, so they had a lot of latitude to develop a marketing program outside the reaches of headquarters marketing up in Rochester. So one of the other people on the project came up with the idea or the concept of Chief Packaging Officer as a name. And then I did the strategy and account management, account lead from the agency perspective, and worked with the client. And we published a legit packaging industry trade magazine. We had about 40 pieces of content a month. It was a program that we were able to execute month in, month out. We formalized each of the different elements. So there was news curation. There was a couple feature articles. There was usually an executive interview, so that we just put on repeat every month. And that that body of content, what we learned is when you publish, you attract, and the more you publish, the more leads you get. And so if you model out a sales funnel from traffic to leads to sales to opportunities to sales, you can model out the sales funnel and figure out how big an audience do you need in order to get the number of leads that and sales that you want out of the funnel. And so we use.
I think it's I think that, you know, people, and especially in the B2B space, don't realize how powerful what we call a content hub. It's a journalistic quality content organized around a topical center, right? And in this case, you created a branded content hub, essentially a magazine online for a B2B company. You know, it's a powerful mechanism for B2B lead gen and awareness building, because it gets great SEO, plus it gets industry recognition, and you get thought leadership. So I thought that was, you know, that's like a great example of an early branded content hub, you know, that we both ended up getting into quite a different ways. I'm from an SEO perspective, you were from a demand generation perspective. You know, that is great. Yeah, you know, do you often, you know, the thing that everybody focuses on is quite a bit is that content hubs are written, but I think you have experience with other types of content hubs, right?
Absolutely. So we worked on a project together, and we produced a content hub that had at launch 60 pieces of content right out of the gate. And we added to that at launch for about a month and a half. And at the 6 weeks into a soft launch of the content hub, we put on a webinar. And the thing about a content hub is you got to distribute as well. You need to get the word out there. So when we did the webinar, we advertised it on LinkedIn, we had search advertising, and we paid for talent. We didn't get the VP of engineering. We actually got industry thought leaders to participate on the webinar. And that was our hard launch of the content hub. So we actually brought in 300 leads to the company at the launch of the content hub with a webinar. And you know, it's really important to have content of all kinds, multimedia, indexable, highly credible content, and that's what Google is going to respond to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to ask my guests, and this I think is a good time to ask it. You know, I call wise content, you know, content that that incorporates semantic science, behavioral science, artificial intelligence, and data to make marketing content that's smart, that performs better. How do you react to that, and how would you modify that or improve that?
I'm sorry, Joseph. How do what? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
How would you modify that or improve upon that?
So I come at it from a writer producer's perspective. Mm-hmm. So what I love about this idea of wise content is it's the data underlying that content and the ability to use, you know, on-page SEO to, you know, really be data driven about what you produce, and to but at the same time, you know, I'm a writer, so I want to get the story told, and I think the most important thing is that they have to work together. You know, a well-told story that's constructed poorly isn't going to be seen by Google. And if you don't have, like you talk about behavioral aspects, right? Learning how to get your site to have a better UX, UI, so people consume more content, having ways to share content. The data that underlies all the content is so important, but so is the storytelling.
Cool. Yeah, you know, I thought, you know, I guess in some ways I think that the definition implies that there's some story in there, but you're right. Story is one of the most important aspects of content. You have to trigger those emotional reasons that people need to take action, right? And the story does that, not the data, not the information. It's the story that resonates with them that gets them to take a good action. We do that a lot in the travel space. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the content culture and your MO, and the 7 steps, right? The publisher's MO and the 7 steps. So look forward to talking about that next.
Sounds good.
Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you interested in having a better relationship with yourself, others, and God? Greetings. I'm your host, Dr. George Andow, for the show A Journey Through into Awareness. On my show, we journey into the awareness that the mind of God is the true seat of our personal consciousness. We join together each Monday at 7 p.m., so tune in on Talk Radio NYC.
You know you have it. The potential for a more rewarding life, a life that matters. But how do you get there? The answer is in a best-selling book by the coach of the successful and wealthy, Ken D. Foster, The Courage to Change Everything, Daily Strategies and Wisdom to Awaken Your Hidden Genius and Transform Your Life. With this powerful yet amazingly simple daily guide, your future is in your hands. You will be empowered to unlock your potential, bring out your true gifts, increase your wealth, and take your life and business to a new level. Get your life-transforming copy of Ken D. Foster's The Courage to Change Everything by going to couragetochange.us. That's couragetochange.us. Quite frankly, there's no other book like this. Imagine what your life could be like if you had at your fingertips the success principles to create the life you've always wanted. Are you ready to live your dream? Go to couragetochange.us.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
So this is Joseph McElroy back with the Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast and my guest, Keith Reynolds. So Keith, you have a book out, The Content Culture. I remember you were writing that for a while and now you got it out. How's it been going with that book?
It's great. I highly recommend trying out being an author for anyone who's never tried it. It's a life-changing experience, and it takes a discipline to get everything focused and on paper, but it also takes a village or a team to get a book published. So it's an adventure, and I'd recommend it for anyone.
Cool. So what's it about?
So it's called The New Content Culture. Think like a publisher to grow your business. And it is about content marketing. And the fundamental thesis is that the modern publishing model of a media company, and media companies have changed as technology changes, but it's been advertising based. Subscription also, subscription usually pays for the operational aspects of distributing media, but the advertising is where the money's made. And yet in the last 20 years, the publishing tools have, as the internet has spread in utilization, the publishing tools are in the hands of everybody, not just the publishers and the media companies. What was missing, and why I think there's a lot of confusion about publishing content and content marketing, is there's no ROI model. And what I think, if I get recognized for one thing one day, it's the insight in building the Chief Packaging Officer program that you can stand up a magazine as a brand, an online media property as a brand, but what you need to measure it on is the lead generation. And so really have to build the technology underpinning so that you can capture the value of your traffic. And then there's techniques of getting people to engage with that. But if you can draw a direct line between traffic to your website and sales that either come into your shopping cart or through your CRM and with your sales team, if you build that purposefully, you will have an environment where you can really understand the dollar in on marketing and the dollars out on sales. And you can now start to budget for it instead of burdening everybody to create content, in their workday, because you have a planning model to work from and optimize. You can hire the people to do your writing, and good writers will pay for themselves many times over compared to just having your staff or team make content. Now, you want to bring as much as you can in-house and keep the costs as low as possible. But if you're doing it purposefully with demand generation techniques and lead generation planning, you can think of your website and your blog, and I hate the word blog. That's why we love to come up with a brand name for your blog, like Chief Packaging Officer or The Hub or Wise Content, right? It allows you to do things like go to a trade show or get on a digital networking event, and don't say, hey, can I have a sales call with you? But I'd like to write a story about you. I think what you're doing is really interesting. Which one do you think is going to get a better response? So publishers have a lot of leverage because they create media, and you can do that for your business too.
Cool. So is your ROI model the publisher's MO? Is that your content strategy ROI model?
Yeah. So having led a lot of whiteboarding sessions, I got to the point where I've got 7 buckets that I get executives and entrepreneurs and marketing teams to focus on. You have to have a big idea. So Wise Content, that's the big idea, right? And that then drives the second bucket, the editorial strategy. And that's largely based on the data you gather in your keyword research. And then you build an editorial calendar. And with a calendar, you can now assign writers, and you can budget for the content, whether it's video, audio, podcasts, written materials, webinars. All of those take resources to happen. So your editorial calendar also starts to build out your budget. You need to publish and distribute that content on the social media networks. You need to also have a community and events strategy. Now I've separated community and events out of publishing and promotion because of this dynamic where you're going out and doing prospecting at these events, but you're also able to source content at these events. You need to build your marketing, you need to build this marketing program, this content program on top of marketing automation in your CRM and your shopping cart. So it's directly connected into the outcomes you're looking for. You have to train your sales team to use content, right? That just doesn't come naturally. So, but if you do sales enablement techniques and you train your salespeople that at this stage of the sales engagement with a customer, this is the content that you can share, and you make it easy for them to share it, they become tightly integrated into the content you publish. And that's where you get a lot of leverage. And then lastly, the last bucket is an ROI model. And you can go to my website. I think we'll talk about it a little later. You can download an ROI model that I've used dozens of times to help executives see that content's not an expense, it's an investment, and you're expecting a return on it.
So this whole process really culminates in a ROI model, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's part of the ROI modeling methodology, I think, and incidentally, it also creates a branded content hub.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
It gets everybody to see the big picture and their little piece of it. And the executive, if you can come and say, we're going to invest $1 in content, but we're going to get $3 back, and we're using our own numbers to come up with that forecast, executives will pay attention to that.
So let me add, I love the term you came up, which is the North Star idea. How would an individual or a company generate a North Star idea?
That's a great question. And, it's half science and half art. The the market research that you have or that you do that identifies customers' likes and dislikes and the things that they find inconvenient. The SEO research that you do to identify what keywords are driving traffic in your industry. The survey of your competitors and the website and social media that they're using. All of that starts to create the map of the marketplace. And then you apply your creative energies to what name would really resonate in that marketplace, given all that information you've researched. And so it may be, as we found in one of the projects we worked on, the branding company had done all this research, and in their materials, they had the word untapped. And we said, boom, there is the big idea. There's the North Star idea. Other times it comes when you're brainstorming around a table, a conference room table or on a Zoom call. So, but the idea is to come up with a name for your media that's different than blog. And that becomes a hook that people can start to get their brain around as they enter your world.
Does it have to be sort of like a USP, a unique selling proposition? Sort of, it needs to be unique. It needs to have a promise. It needs to have a sell, right? That sort of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you think about this chief packaging officer, packaging has 1 million employees throughout the United States, and the people who are involved in packaging, they're passionate about it, and yet they are measured on things like save 1/10 of a penny off the cardboard, right? It's and how do you get this cardboard to flow through a production process and come out before you load it on a truck, it gets into a box and it's not going to break in transit. Those are the things that a packaging, it tends to be engineering focused, but it's creative, it's strategic, it's the last moment of truth in a consumer's hand. If your packaging has a mislabel, you can do a recall that drops your stock price by 19%. I read long ago that was the impact that a product recall can have on corporate value. So when we came, it wasn't me, but when we came up with the idea of chief packaging officer, these people really resonated with that, and it caught their attention, and so they'd be willing to just give it a look.
So if you're you have had a lot of work with big corporations, but you've also done some small business stuff and even entrepreneurs. I know that you've sort of covered the gamut and I imagine for a big corporation, you got to put together and manage a team of people involved with this, and so that has its own, structural, problems. But an individual, what would you, if you said, somebody said to you, Keith, you got to start a company, you got to market, you got to come up with a North Star idea, and you got to do it in 2 weeks, and you don't have a lot of people to help you. What would the steps you would take?
I'd buy my book. You gotta, we don't do things in a vacuum. So you gotta have a team. Even if you're a solopreneur, right? You've got your advisory board, you've got people that you work with, you've got partners. I tell people that content marketing can be a little ebook and MailChimp, right? And if you go through the 7 buckets and think through that, and you may come up with an idea and test it with your friends to get your North Star idea. Your editorial strategy could be you blog once a month and you've got an ebook that you're out distributing. Publishing and promotion is using social networks like LinkedIn. So knowing which network you're going to connect with most. So I'm a LinkedIn guy, right? I sell B2B. And I publish on LinkedIn, and I use that network pretty effectively to meet people. Your community and events, where are you going? What Slack channels do you join? What associations are you participating in? So you can do all this at a very small scale, as well as you said, when you have lots of people, you still have to do it. It just becomes more complex. And so in addition to the book, we have some worksheets that we work with clients on so that we organize all the information that the publishing team needs in order to execute. And then we have weekly meetings, right? Or bi-weekly meetings that we use to keep everything coordinated. And that's having a meeting protocol. So it's a scalable idea.
Right. So the individual should do meetings with themselves or with whatever people they can pull together, right, to participate in this adventure together. And I might add, some of the things that you mentioned in the SEO space, you can use, there's a free keyword planner tool. There's various free tools to do keyword research. All those will generate lots of interesting terms that people talk about. Looking at Google Trends, right, is a way to pull information for ideation. There's starting to be AI tools out there, and one of the things I'm developing is I got somebody working on it right now, developing there's a comprehensive list of content-related AI tools out there.
Interesting.
I'm planning to have I want to have the definitive source for that. But there's some interesting ones coming out that I'm seeing that there's tickling my fancy and ideas of what you can do. But some of them are ideation tools, right? And you're gonna.
That's really interesting. You're pulling that together, because I think when AI is mentioned, people shy away from it because they think you've got to be a data scientist. But really, when you are working in Google Docs and it types ahead a sentence for you, that's AI.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a lot of tools. I'm sure you're going to find things that, mere mortals can use, and others that you really have to be a data scientist to use. And so I would look forward to seeing your list.
I will. It'll be up on the Wise Content Creates Wealth site in the near future. So we're going to take another break. We come back, we'll finish up a little more talking about your ROI model and your spreadsheet, and then some goodbyes and promotions and all that sort of stuff. All right, talk to you soon.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauver, employment law, business law attorney, and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hi, it's Joseph McElroy back with Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast, and my guest, Keith Reynolds of Publio. So Keith, your book, the New Content Culture, and its publisher MO, you end up with 7 steps, and the 7th one is your ROI model, and you have actually some tools that people can use on your site to download. Can you tell us what are the components of that ROI model you do for content strategy? And then of course you'll tell us how to get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the key things to doing a project, especially when you're in a mid-sized, small, larger, small company, a mid-sized company, or even, where I've done a lot of work in enterprise. It's building the ROI model to give everyone an assurance that, as the guy that hired me into IBM used to say, that dog will hunt. And right. And so ROI has an input. What resources are we going to expend to generate results? And then what return do we expect? So on my website, you can download a Google Doc. You'll get a landing page, you fill it out, that'll refer you to a thank you page. And when you download that spreadsheet, it'll have you basically create a copy and put it onto your G drive. And you'll have a clean spreadsheet. The first tab is your budget. And the left column of the budget are the things that it takes to build a content hub, whether it be, having an agency or a firm like Galileo create the articles, or your videographer to create the videos. Maybe it's you're going to do a podcast or a webinar series. Well, you've got to allocate, if you're going to use your head of marketing or head of sales to be the host, then you've got to allocate some time, right? And then there's the producer role, and somebody's got to line up the speakers. This stuff doesn't happen for free. So the first tab are, where are we going to spend our money to make this happen? And we use our strategic planning process to come up with the tactics, and then the tactics go in the left column of the budget. Across the top of the budget are the months. And so now we're going to look at how much do we spend over time on our budget. And at the end of a year, we've got a fully loaded budget. And so great, now we're going to management and saying, I got to spend the money. The second tab is the so what, right? The second tab, we map out what are all the sources of your leads and how much incremental revenue do we think we can get? And what is the funnel for that? So the two examples that are on tab 2 of the ROI model are our content hub and a webinar series. And so we estimate how many marketing qualified leads we're going to generate. We look at our historical and say, how many marketing leads convert to sales qualified leads? How many sales qualified leads become an opportunity that we write a proposal for? And then how many proposals close? And that waterfall is embodied in tab 2 of the spreadsheet. And now so it's a template, so you can add your own sources of leads. The interesting thing is, when I've used it with a lot of executives, they realize they don't have enough leads at the top of the funnel to ever succeed. So it really is kind of oh my, kind of an experience of, wow, we need to generate more leads. The second thing that it pretty quickly identifies is, if you have a product that costs $20,000 a year or $60,000 a year, it doesn't take too many sales in a content program to pay for itself, right? And as a marketer, a general rule of thumb is, if I spend $1, I want to get at least $3 back. And so this planning tool allows you to take the expenses on tab 1 and the waterfall of traffic to leads to proposals to sales on page 2. And now you come up with what I call the E to R ratio, and that's expense to revenue. And if that is below 0.33, you've got something strategically worth evaluating and going to management with and trying to get funded.
Cool. And so what is we want to tell them the website where that's located?
You can get that at Publio, which is PUBLI.io. And you'll see it right up top. It says ROI calculator.
And where can you get your book?
And you can get the New Content Culture on Amazon. And if you can also just Google, I found it very effective. Google the New Content Culture, Keith Reynolds, and it'll take you right to it on Amazon.
So you have 2 minutes more, and I know you're doing some good stuff with nonprofits in the city of Stamford. Do you want to give a shout out about what you're doing there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm a big believer in giving back, and when you give, you get. And so as you know, I think when we met, I was doing a lot with the AMA, and about 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to get involved with Stanford Innovation Week. And it's, there's other festivals like it. The big one is South by Southwest. But Stamford, Connecticut has a very unique environment. We have lots of corporate headquarters. We used to be a bedroom community to New York City, but about 10 years ago, it flipped and it's now a net inbound commuting city. And we have a lot of data science, a lot of insure tech, fintech, lots of hedge funds and private equity up here. And yet it still has a brand of a sleepy little community, right? A bedroom community. And so we found that there was a huge demand. We have corporations and sponsors. We have community involvement. The states, help support this. Just a huge demand to have a festival here. And so it's uniquely our own, but it's, arts and technology and food and entertainment. And in the age of COVID, we did this year's all online. And we have the Stanford Town Center Mall, and we had a drive-through exhibit. It was 4 floors of drive-through, kind of like a fun house. And that, we were in the depths of COVID in September when we put on the event. So it's really a way to just get everybody mixed up and involved. And, areas are now, I think, realizing that promoting and selling a city to corporations and giving away tax breaks is not as effective as creating a area that people want to live, that are, has a great lifestyle. And if you can recruit employees to a place, you become attractive to the employers, and you can attract businesses into an area. So we've really done it. It's a big idea. We've really grown it. I think before COVID, we had 5,000 people engaged, and I think it dropped to around 1,500, 2,000 during COVID, but a good platform to build on, and we're already starting to work on.
And how do people get to that?
And that would be siweek.org. And if you're, the last thing I'll say is I just joined out of that experience, I just joined the board of the Stanford Symphony, which has gone all digital. So imagine, taking an organization that used to put 1,500 people, 2,000 people in a theater to go.
So I appreciate that. So thank you for coming on board, man, and being part of this podcast. And I look forward to we'll do some work together. And talking about that work, Galileo, I want to mention, is my company, and we do all the tactical services that around the Content Hub, from doing the SEO to creating the content. We have a large network of highly skilled writers, but we do things in such volume that we get great prices for even the smallest company and to the largest. And we've done 40,000 pieces of content. The year before last for one company, and another company did 2 pieces of content in the year. But we're able to scale in that development. But we all do it with a very smart, wise approach. We imbue all our content with wisdom from data, behavioral science, semantics, schema, all the things that make it perform better. And you can go to our website, GalileoTechMedia.com, GalileoTechMedia.com to find out more about us. This podcast is having a website built right now called WiseContentCreatesWealth.com. It will have things like a comprehensive list of tools and resources that will make content wiser using AI and data. So we're building that, and of course it'll tell you all about these shows. We are part of Talk Radio New York NYC network, and if you go to talkradio.nyc, you can see there's a lot of great shows, especially on Friday. Along with this show oriented towards business. I recommend you go to that site, and then you stick around on the talkradio.nyc, where we also stream live if you're not listening on our Facebook. Originally, that's where it is streaming live, and you can hear some other great shows. And I recommend that you go there, because I've listened to some of those shows. The one right before is particularly good, I think, and find out about us. We are also on Facebook, as I mentioned before, facebook.com/wise content creates wealth, where this show is also streamed live, and then a copy is kept around there for you to go look at. The Talk Radio site also has a transcript of the show that you can go get if you want to. And we also are doing Twitter and TikTok and all those other things. So thank you everybody for showing up. Next week, we'll have another great show. I'm looking forward to introducing you to let's see who the guest, sorry, just drew a next week is going to be Joey Kilrain, a longtime friend of mine who is a UX expert and designer on really intelligent ways to interact with your clients and make your content work better. So talk to you then next week. Same time, same bat channel. There, I just showed my age. Ciao.
Thanks for the opportunity, Joseph. You have a great day.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at